What is the state of artificial intelligence in 2022? How does Lyft discover and manage vulnerabilities in their services? And what exactly Continuous Delivery Foundation mean by the term policy? Let's figure out in the issue number 45 of Architecture Weekly. Let's go! And before the issue itself, if you really like the newsletter, don't hesitate to support it at Patreon at Boosty. Running this newsletter requires to pay for the hosting and some of the software licenses, and it costs a little bit. Help me paying for that. And the first highlight of the week is the state of artificial intelligence in 2022. I think many of you heard about Midjourney and other neural networks that create beautiful images just for the text description. However, it's just the peak of an iceberg, and there's a lot of things that artificial intelligence is doing for us in the IT industry, and actually not only in the IT, but in the medicine, in physics, in theoretical mathematics, and many more. Artificial intelligence helps us to write code, solve mathematical problems, and even discovers the structure of proteins. As AI is a big thing now in IT and not only industries, this report tries to understand what's the state of it in 2022. And it covers the AI safety research, it covers what companies are doing what hardware for AI, what are the trends, and what are the predictions, and what predictions so far were really realized for today. Really click through all the 100 slides of the report and understand what's going on right now and what we can expect in the future. Another highlight of the week is the term policy in continuous delivery. The trick here is that when we are building the CI/CD systems, we usually want to enforce some policies on it. For example, that every CI/CD pipeline should include static code analysis, or for example that we want to forbid some deploys on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Eve. And these things are called policies. And before that, there were no such formal thing from the Continuous Delivery Foundation. And now they introduce this term and provide some examples of tools that will be able to make those rules and impose them on your CI/CD pipeline in a centralized and efficient fashion. So check out the article, find out what the tools they suggest, and see if they can be applicable into your CI/CD pipeline. And the last highlight for today is the vulnerability management at Lyft. So they do use Docker and they use base images, right? And through using them, they're able to scale building their services, which they have quite a lot. And of course, security is an important concern for them as for anybody else. And if you discover a vulnerability in some image, how do you really patch it in all the services that rely on this particular base image? Here, Lyft in their blog post describe how they understand if some particular service is affected by vulnerability that they discovered, how they patch it in the base image, and how they roll out the new version. Very interesting article, check it out. Okay, let's continue with the follow-up. And the first thing is the security design of AWS Nitro system. And the trick here is that more and more systems actually process very sensitive data, like person identification information or process health information, or even the data of the credit cards, personal commercial information. And with high value of those systems, we need really secure hardware and software solutions to protect those datasets. And AWS Nitro is one of the solutions. And this week, AWS shared a set of articles that you can see on the screen, where they describe the architecture of AWS Nitro and how they provide security on the hypervisor level. Check it out. Speaking about the security principles and security in the cloud itself, I'm including an article from SysDic about security best practices that you want to follow. Actually, I was searching for an article that will describe 5 steps that you need to take when you set up a new account on GCP, but instead I found this article, and it includes a lot of best practices that you want to really follow when you start doing your projects on GCP. And it starts with the understanding of this separation of responsibility from cloud to the application, and describes the practices that you should follow, including the risk assessment and so on. And those practices include like proper IAM management, securing your buckets, securing your policies, enabling multi-factor authentication, and many more. So go through the article and see if you're following those practices. Okay, next one is an absolute banger if you're thinking frequently about distributed systems. So typically we think about Raft, about distributed consensus and all that stuff. But if we take a look on the problem of distributed system from other perspective and don't demand a unified view of the state, then we can think, what if every agent of the system can have their own state? And what we can demand is that eventually, if every node receives the same set of the updates, the state will converge. In order to do that, we will need a special set of data types, and they are called CRDT. Please follow the article where all of this described in a very detailed fashion. And actually, article also shows how you can build a JSON CRDT type, which allow you to build such a system. That's awesome. Next one is an interesting piece of architecture of embedded software, like when you have a chip and you need to come up with some software there. It appears that portability requirement is really high because if you run out of chip because like the manufacturer can't deliver you enough, then you need to port it. And if you don't make the appropriate architecture decisions, then you can't really scale your business. So yeah, follow the article about the embedded software architecture. Many years ago, the founder of Heroku formulated 12 factors that affect the development of software architecture as a service. Many years passed and we want to revisit those 12 factors and see how they changed during all those years. So if we treat the code repository differently, or we think about the dependencies differently, or configuration change somehow. So follow the article about 12-factor app revisited. And if we continue speaking about DevOps things, 12 factors and so on, we want to make a note that like this idea of DevOps and the developers should do everything starting from business requirements to deploying and managing their applications in production. It's not quite really working because the cognitive load is really high. And a regular developer should really know the nuances of running the databases in cloud. So the companies started to realize that, and they're moving towards the internal developer platform, something like a foundation that you can rely on and don't think a lot about running your systems in production, but relying on this platform to do the majority of the work for you. For example, in Bolt, we're doing kind of the same. So the developer should just write the code, write the test, ensure that everything is working, and then internal platform will handle all this deployment to AWS and so on. So this article describes like what is internal developer platform, why the cognitive load is really high, and how you could use it and what tools to build this platform. So check it out. Okay, and the last one for today is 5 great diagramming tools for enterprise and software architects, written by myself. And it is quite similar to the article that I wrote a year and a half ago about 5 diagrams that you need to describe your software architecture. Check out the link in the upper corner. And the peculiarity of this one is that it got published to the Red Hat blog. So that's awesome. Check it out. Great, thank you for your attention. If you liked the article, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button. And if you really like the content, please support it at Patreon or Boosty. It helps me writing the newsletter and bring you great content every week. Thank you very much. See you next week.